My name's Levi. I work here at Jack Straw. Thanks for joining us in person and online. Really appreciate those of you who are able to make it through the rain and the traffic to come out here. To start off, I want to mention that we're meeting on the lands of the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot nations and other Coast Salish peoples, past and present. The staff, board, and artists of Jack Straw Cultural Center acknowledge that we're living, creating, working, and playing on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle and the Salish Sea, and we honor them and the land itself with deep gratitude. I also want to thank Aisha and Tom, who are making all of the technological things here happen tonight, and for you out there in the world as well. And thanks to Athr for being here. We receive funding for these programs, our artist residency programs, of which the New Media Gallery is one, from the City of Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture, Washington State Arts Commission, National Endowment for the Arts, Lester and Phyllis Epstein Foundation, Arts Fund, and individual contributors. And December is a great time to become an individual contributor of any size. There's links on our website, and there's actually a QR code up on the door there if anyone's interested. But yeah, whenever people can give in any amount at any time, we always appreciate that. I think that covers everything. But yeah, so thank you for being here. So Athr has got 1 week left of this installation, so you can come out if you haven't seen it yet. Come down to the gallery anytime next week, well, during normal business hours. So probably best to give us a call first. But anyway, Monday through Friday next week, come on by through Friday the 20th and check out this really cool and layered installation, which Athr will talk about a little bit more right now.
Yay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's awesome. It's a nice little cozy group here, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the installation. I'm going to keep it kind of informal. I'll just let you know like my influences, what the process was like, and kind of what all went into it. And then, yeah, you guys can ask questions about the different elements if you want to, and I'll keep it pushing. Okay. So one of my big inspirations for this was Jet Set Radio Future, which is this old game. It was one of the first games available on Xbox. I played it growing up, and it was actually set in the year 2024, which is like, I know, kind of crazy. Yeah, I think that number 2024 has been kind of a sci-fi number for a while, and now that we're living in the year, we have a lot of books and different medias that have been set in that time. So this game was really about this gang of skaters that were revolutionized this very corporation-filled world, which is not unlike our world now. Just kind of scary, but also true. And I fell in love with the fashion, the attitudes, the different personas of this. And I think, in the album, me and Aisha, we certainly explore so many different personas. I think there were times when we would be recording and I would look at her and she would look at me and be like, okay, that's persona number like 12. Like we've escalated it even further. But yeah, so I love the fashion, the in-your-face attitude, and all the different kind of like personas that the game had. And certainly the soundtrack. This soundtrack is one of the most iconic soundtrack. This actually game has a bit of a cult following, and if you're in the know, the soundtrack is like one of the things that people really love and revere. A big composer, his name was Hideki Nagonamu, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing it, but he made all these really interesting futuristic songs, these very like glitchy, in-your-face tracks that even now I listen to them and they just blow me away. I think that kind of is a testament to their ability to stand the test of time. And this is a picture of him. Okay, I'm gonna jump to this video. This is actually a video which will give you like a quick little clip of the song. Oh, not that. This. Okay. So you see, like, just listening to the sounds, it's kind of like it has this old school sound with this very radio voice, but it's also like glitchy and there's a lot of attitude in it. It's really this postmodern mix of all these different things. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that went into building the game, which is a really big component of this exhibit. So City of Gods is really inspired by this real world place called the Golden Bridge in Vietnam. Has anyone ever heard of this, or is this the first time? Okay. What have you heard of it? I'm curious.
It's just familiar to me, but I think that I've probably seen pictures. There's a million different sort of travel-based Instagram type of accounts, and so there is something that like I can associate with, but I can't quite put my finger on it. I've definitely never been there.
Yeah. I've never been there either. I've admired it from afar from a while. But yes, it is certainly a very iconic place. It's relatively new. I want to say it was built in the 2010s. So basically, it's like you're standing on the hands of God. So, the clouds are below you, you're in the sky, and it's very surreal. And I'm a designer, I'm an architectural designer by day. And so this place has always really inspired me. I'm going to jump to another video of it, actually, unless this is going to take me to it. I don't think so. Yeah, there's this really mystic quality to it, and I think it's really special because it makes you feel something, and it's very rare that a place can just evoke a very strong emotion from you. That's what I really love about it. This image really gives you a sense of its scale. It's massive, like even zoomed out here, you can still clearly see the arms and the bridge. Okay. If you've never heard of it before, hopefully now you want to go. Hopefully I've enticed you. So, let me get up. So in making the game, I really wanted to evoke that same feeling of like wonder and like wow and like, where am I? That very elevated experience. And that was no easy feat. This was my first time ever doing game development. I'm a polymath, so I love to engage in all these different mediums and really use them to evoke feelings from my audience members and my fans. So the purpose of the game is to find this gate. You were asking me that question earlier. So this is the gate of no return. This is basically the entry to the second world, which is not yet open, but once you find it, that is kind of like you've hit the end of it. The gate itself is hidden in a very tucked away spot in the world. The world is vertical, so the way you're supposed to engage with it is you're supposed to move up and down it versus out and through it. Although there are some things to find out and through if you want to do that. Another motive of the game is to collect these apples. So Idun's apples are a part of this very old mythology where Idun was this carrier of these apples that would give the gods mortality or immortality. So I just like the idea of just having something that's very desirable, and it's just this very ancient imagery of the apple is always like the symbol of knowledge, but also something forbidden that you can't have. So if you look around the world, there's all these little apples everywhere. And when you click on them, they take you to links to a set of different digital art pieces that I made. So this is one of them, but there's like 15, let's say 15. Okay, and that's an image of it in the game. Another big part of this world is architecture. As an architectural designer and architecture being one of my mediums, I really love creating these very futuristic worlds. And so developing the architecture for the space really took quite some time. So this is the 360 image of the world. So when you're in it and you're kind of looking around, this is basically the wraparound of that. And this was kind of like my favorite tower in the world that I developed. It's based off of Einstein's tower, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, which is in Potsdam, Germany, if anyone's ever heard of that. Okay. So this is the tower it's based off of. It's been around since about 1920. It's a very beautiful piece, and I don't know, I saw it maybe 9 years ago, and I completely fell in love with it. Felt so mystical and surreal, and I loved bringing that inspiration into the game and into the world. Okay, so that's it. It's, I'm open to answering questions or going back to different slides if people want to explore those.
How is that tower related to Einstein? What is the...
So I want to say that he spent some time in Potsdam, and they built this tower to honor him. That's, yeah.
Is it is it an observatory?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about the music side. I'm just always curious to hear about the music side of things. Can you talk a little bit more about like the album you've been working on and how it connects
Okay.
to all this?
Turn this off. Sorry, people who are in the social media content world, you know what just happened there. So I would say the music it's meant to be really transformative. Like, it's meant to give you a sense of being in a space. Like, it's more than just listening to something. You're almost trying to travel through it. So I think I'm just trying to bring the world to life even more. I think for some people, they hear the sounds and instantly they feel transported, whereas other people, they want to interact with something. Other people want to see an image. So it's just trying to evoke those many senses to get to the end point.
Oh, and are we, because I know the game, like, it's on the screen in our gallery, but I know it's online. Is that something people can access on their own? Like, is that something that you share, or is that more like for specific exhibitions?
So the game is live. Yeah, you can access it on your own on the Monaverse site, which is basically like this Web3 platform that allows creators like myself to upload these interactive worlds. So yeah, if you type in Monaverse City of Gods Athr, you can find it and play it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are there symbolic relationships between the portals, the vertical nature of the world, and the apples? Is there any... What choices, or how did you arrive at those choices?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think I do like the idea of jumping through like levels. I think when you think of really theoretical understandings of existence, I talk about the planes. Has anyone ever heard of the planes of existence? I know it's a bit out there for some people. So I do like the idea that you're kind of like trying to get to this higher place. And I think in my art, I always try to create an elevated place for people to be. I think so much of our world is so, I don't know, like low, kind of very low, suppressed sometimes, that I like the idea that art can kind of elevate you and take you to a more higher plane.
You mentioned the next level, like beyond the portal, isn't it's not ready for us yet. Do you have an idea of when that would be, like when people might be able to break on through? Yeah,
I want to say probably late January, early February, because I want it to coincide with the release of the next player mode. Aisha, we have work to do, but she's my audio engineer, and we've been working to develop the player modes of the album. So this player mode was anti-hero mode, and so there are 4 distinct player modes, and 2 of them live in City of Gods, and then 2 of them live in City of Fallen Angels, which is this very dark, ominous gate that will be opened. So once that mode drops, once villain mode drops, then we'll open the gate, and all the villains can party in the underworld if they want to.
So is that not to, sorry to keep returning to the music, but
it's okay.
Where my brain goes is is like each mode a song or a couple songs, and is it like one album, or is it like 4? Like, I'm just trying to get us.
Yeah, no, I think these are great questions.
Idea of the scope of the project and what we have to look forward to.
Yeah, so the album is the Butterfly Effect. It's like 12 songs long, and then each mode is like 4 tracks-ish long. Yeah, so there's anti-hero mode, which is one that we just dropped and is open and available. There's God mode, which is the one that lives also in the city of God. There's villain mode, and then there's demon mode. And those two modes live in the underworld.
And so folks can hear at least some of that music already, like out on streaming platforms and stuff. Right?
Yeah, Laura Croft, which is the single that was dropped a couple months ago, is from the demon world. So, and if you haven't listened to Laura Croft, you should. It's kind of trippy.
The protagonist or the playable character in these games, I mean, in the different versions, do they have different intentions that kind of reflect sort of the modality of what you're describing there, whether it's demon or villain or god or?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I'll say yes. The different modes have different personas that I, embody when I'm performing, and yeah, and they each carry with them like different attributes. I would say City of God is very light, it's enlightened and really elevated, and then the avatar is kind of this very futuristic, metallic, clean looking player.
So each of these layers of the game is kind of reflections of your persona.
Yeah.
And your process as well, I guess.
Yes, exactly. And I like to say that the different player modes are the same story, just told to different perspectives. And, and sometimes in one perspective, I'm the unconventional hero, and another, maybe I'm a villain. I'm doing things that people don't want me to be doing, or, not following the narrative that I've been assigned. So.
What sort of tools did you use to create both the game and your music? What sort of tools do you typically like to use, or did you use?
Yeah, for the game, I used Unity, which is a game development software. I built it on the Monoverse SDK, which I don't want to get too jargony, because I don't want to. Okay. So basically, Monoverse, which is the platform that the game is hosted on, has this technical package that they give to artists, and it allows them to create different players, and it just means that I get to focus on the fun things, like making the trees and the hands and all that kind of stuff. I developed the actual world. I think I have a picture of the process. Oh, I don't. Okay, I thought I had a picture of the hands. It's okay. I created the actual world using Rhino, which is a 3D modeling tool that's used a lot in architecture. Yeah, so all the different tiles and the hands and the trees were all modeled in that software.
And then what about for music creation? What sort of tools do you prefer for composition and recording?
Yeah, so I use a variety of tools. I like to use Splice as my sample library, so I sample pretty heavily. I'm like, yes, we have a fellow Splice. Is that a Splice hat that you're wearing? Oh my God. Okay, hardcore. Yeah, so I love using Splice to get samples. I'll generally pull them into Reaper, which is a lower level. I see a familiar face. Sorry, I'm going to start the answer over, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and I'm going to start this contact. Hi, Grant.
Hi.
Welcome to the party.
Come on, get by the heater.
Okay, so my last question was, what different softwares did I use to create the game and develop the music? So for the game, I used Unity along with a Monoverse SDK kit, which is basically a package that Monoverse gives to artists that allows us to have different controls and have different players, so we can focus on the fun stuff like modeling and sound design. Then as far as the music goes, I sampled heavily from the Splice library, which I love. They're awesome. And this guy has a Splice hat on, which is like level 10. Okay. So generally I'll take a set of samples and pull them into Reaper, and I'll develop kind of a preliminary track with sometimes my vocals and just the general melody and structure of the song. And then I'll go into studio with Aisha and we'll pull it into Pro Tools, where we'll actually flesh the song out, really refine. Aisha has had many long, stressful nights refining tracks with me, but is such a trooper. And then, yeah, I think this time we've been mastering using Pro Tools as well. Let's see here, that covers the game. And then as far as like textures go, I do some texture development in Photoshop, and I also just like to draw. Like that's the quickest go-to thing.
What's your process like from conception to creation?
That's a really good question. Okay, I love this one. I would say it is very intuition based. I don't start with a medium in mind. I start with like a feeling and a place that I want to take people, and then I sort of explore different mediums and see, well, what are my tools? How am I going to take them to that place? And I'll oftentimes switch mediums halfway through, almost at the end. Like it can be kind of chaotic sometimes, but when it's right, I definitely know it and can feel it, and I just go with that.
What advice would you maybe have for somebody who has a hard time trusting their voice in their artistic process?
Yeah, I think that's a great insight. I think it's hard to trust it, but I think the more you listen to it, the louder it gets. Like first it's just this little tiny thing, and people are like, don't listen to that, just do what we're telling you to. Then you're like, wait, let me like tune in for a second. And then the more you tune in, the easier it gets. It's like a muscle.
What were some of the biggest stumbling blocks you had to get to this place in your creative career?
That's a good question.
Or stumbling blocks, or sudden acts of amazing, successful, spontaneous luck.
Okay. Okay, I'll start with the luck one. So I do think that there is an element to right place, right time, but that doesn't control everything. I'm just saying that there is an element of that. Like for instance, I was just in Art Basel, Miami, and I was supposed to meet with a bunch of collectors, and I was in traffic. I was stuck. I was like in literal hell. I was just like, okay, like I flew all the way down here. If I don't meet these people, I'm like screwed. And I was in an Uber, and the Uber driver could not care less. He was like drinking a Coke, and he was like, yeah, there's traffic. I was like, bro, like everything is on the line. But then I was doing an Uber share, and actually the CEO of a really important art company came in and had a conversation with me, and it was amazing, and offered me an amazing opportunity. So I will say there is an element to trusting your gut and seeing where it leads you. It might not always make sense, but it doesn't mean that there's not something there. And I'll say obstacles. I'll just say seeing the bigger picture. I think, when I started out in the arts, I knew I wanted to do something different. I knew I wanted to create something that had never been before, but there weren't very clear pathways to that. And for a while, I just felt like, wow, I have so many interests. This is insane. Like, how am I going to give this a lens, focus it, and actually, like, begin to produce things? So I think, in the beginning, I was just picking up different skills. Like the first thing I did was I was a painter. I studied painting in my undergraduate, and then I got into music when I moved into Seattle, and then I went to architecture school, and then I started conceptualizing like, okay, these have to fit in some way. Like I'm one person with a set of interests that they call it like a T. One person, set of interests, but there are these kind of bands of skills that are intersecting with it. So yeah, I would say just maybe the biggest obstacle has just been creating the narrative, crafting in a way that people can understand it, because that was difficult for many, many years. But yeah, and just meeting the right people and, listening to your heart. Sometimes your heart is smarter than your brain. So.
And in terms of other contemporaries who you would see as kind of artistic peers, do you have influences or other folks who are out there creating that you're particularly inspired or influenced by?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love Grimes. I love Anima, if you know who that is. He's a big digital artist. He makes music. He makes filters. Yeah, I like Josephine Miller. She's a smaller creator, but I met her at a creator workshop doing like an Adobe event, and I just totally hit it off with her. Yeah, I love people who are mixing mediums together and creating the future.
And then whose shoulders do you stand on as an artist, for example? Like, who were your predecessors who maybe, if there is such a thing, because, with new art, sometimes it's hard to trace it back to its origins.
Yeah.
Was there anybody that you were aware of that maybe had a particular, kickstart in the process for you?
Do they have to be very like modern or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think, in the last 30,000 years.
Okay, that's a pretty good scale.
So,
Yeah.
For
Frank Herbert timeline. Maybe from another planet. I don't know.
I would say I really admire Michelangelo. I went to the Sistine Chapel right before I went to architecture school, and I was blown away by it. You know, it is both an amazing piece of architecture and an amazing piece of art. So I think seeing that really resonated with me. I love Da Vinci. I think it's amazing how many mediums he was able to spread across, and you know, I certainly admire him quite a bit. And I'm trying to think of someone more contemporary.
Those are both very good answers. So you don't need them.
Yeah, and I like Enema. I like the stuff that he's doing with EDM and art, and it's very elevated. You feel it as soon as you see his work. You're like, whoa, what is this?
What about like Bjork just kind of came to mind as somebody who does a lot of really like is known as being a musician but does a lot of interdisciplinary stuff. I don't know if that's somebody you've been interested in at all. But
I definitely like them. I haven't dug into their work as much as as much as I should maybe.
She's a weirdo. I feel like you could enjoy diving into her.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
What's been the best thing about people as you've seen people experience your different work?
Well, I'll speak to this exhibit. I actually loved watching you play the game. Like,
well, I was trying to not me, me,
okay,
but other people or me. I don't care. Up to you, but
I'll say that, you know, when I developed the game, I had an idea of how people would engage with it, interact with it. But then when Grant started playing this game, I was just like, whoa. And I think that's my favorite part. Everyone brings their own unique twist to it. They kind of transmutate it and it becomes something else. Like watching him speed across the tiles and get these different crazy views where the android head, I don't know if you saw that in the world, was like in clear sight. He got to the end of the android head, stepped on top of it. I didn't even know that was possible. I think I have a sense of...
Literally couldn't get out of the tree.
Yeah, like, that's what I was saying. Like, also, like, I fall a lot when I play this kid.
I'm not a bad player. I should have helped him, but I didn't because I'm a bad friend.
Oh, no. So yeah, I love watching people engage with it and the different insights they get out of it and the different things that they see in it.
Yeah, it made me question my purpose. Like, what am I here for? It was very meta in that way.
Okay.
I think we all learned a lot that day.
It's a hard day, it seems.
It's like 20 minutes ago. I'm still recovering though.
how much of the architecture of the space and the primary shape here that you actually ended up modeling there was coming from a place of did the shape come together first, or did what the player was going to do come together first?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm like, did I? Okay, I knew I had an image of the hands. Yes, all right. I'll save this so we don't have to deal with this anymore. So I'll say that the form came together first. Something that I got really interested in as an undergrad was sculpture, and I think I still tend to think of space very sculpturally. And so I loved these two hands meeting. It made me think of the God and Adam fresco. We were talking about the Sistine Chapel earlier. At least like a different, more modern take on it. And I think once that was developed, I was like, okay, well, like, how do you play this? How do you move through this? And I think the form just kind of dictated that because it is vertical, up, down. So you can't really go left, right. You have to go up, down.
I love that.
any internet questions? As far as you know.
It's okay.
Do you wish you had more time?
So I wish I had more time.
Are you happy with it?
Yeah, I'm certainly very happy with it.
Yeah,
I think-
well, it's beautiful.
Whatever, thank you. Whatever the time constraint is whatever I will build within that time constraint. So it's just...
That's the important part, though. That's the
Yeah.
that's the time you're working in. So with the form coming first, I don't know. You may have described this since I was like
It's okay.
what was the inspiration for this shape?
Hmm.
Like, what is this shape? It kind of looks like some sort of DNA nucleus. Or,
Okay.
I don't know, a wishbone. I
Okay.
don't know. I could go lots of ways with it. Was there an inspiration there, or was there like, it was more like just pure inspiration, energy, expression of into a shape, you know? Because sometimes I just think, you know, I come at it from two different angles.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair. I think in some ways, you know, now that you're asking me about it, it might
Because
be.
I'm asking if it's symbolic versus like just pure expression.
Oh, I see.
That's actually what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like if you came to it trying to symbolize something, or if you were just purely carving out something, you know.
So I'll say that I started with the hands, and for me, hands are something that I'm kind of obsessed with. Like if you start to look at a lot of my works, you start to see hands everywhere, because they're kind of like the way that humans create. They're our origin of creation. So the hands were first, and then maybe the X in the middle, the two things that twist, are almost like a deconstructed hand that you go up and down. Yeah, and then the tree of life, and there's this really great tree in Washington too. Yeah, it's the ultimate handshake. There's this one tree in Washington. I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's like stuck between two rocks. People seen this tree? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, yeah. If you remember the name, I'll Google it so people can see it. But
I do not.
okay, let me see. It's pretty phenomenal. Let's see here. A tree.
Tree in Washington.
It's like a million.
Yeah,
It's like between two rocks.
exactly.
Between Seattle and Seattle is
Yeah.
impossible.
Oh yay!
Oh, it's
Okay.
called the Tree of Life.
Yeah, it is called the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
Oh, it's an Olympic National Park.
Yeah, I've been there, but I
Yeah, so I was definitely looking at images of this tree. I thought it was really beautiful and just very like awe-inspiring. No, take us back. So yeah, then you can kind of see it when you see this. So yeah, I guess as far as inspiration goes, natural places. Oh, and then the city in Vietnam. We kind of went over this for just a little bit, but I'll jump back to it.
sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So the Golden Bridge.
Ah, yes. Oh my god, I love this. Yeah.
You have a pilgrimage planned out there?
I gotta go out there. Like, yeah, Asia is definitely my next stop. Vietnam, Singapore for sure too.
Is there any religious undertone to the game? Like a heaven and hell aspect kind of a thing? I heard you describe things and sort of hinted at it, but I wasn't sure if it was part of the thought process.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great follow-up question. There are certainly religious tones to it with the apples and the tree of life. And, you know, I grew up religious. I'm no longer religious, but I think there's a lot of richness in the symbology that religion gives us. Yeah, and just these different kind of planes of existence. I know we talked about this a little bit. I do think that, you know, there are higher planes and lower planes, and I'm certainly fascinated by that. And I don't think that there are any actual villains in the world. I think they're just fallen people and elevated people. So, and once demon mode opens up, we'll get to.
We'll see about all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for coming out in the rain and the wind and the cold. Like,
Rainy in here. That's the.
yeah, and we can hang out in the exhibit or hang out here. It doesn't matter. But thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.